My name is Marissa, and we're obviously here to talk all things burnout. Lots of education happening today, and that's like the main purpose of today is to go through some tactics, really understand what burnout is. Because something that I truly believe is that once you have language to go next to, once you have like language paired with like what you're feeling, then you can start to understand it better and you can communicate it to others. So, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Marissa, and I am the owner and founder of Grounding Source, which is a business where we specialize specifically in helping high achievers, overachievers, you know who you are, people who like to get everything done really well. And we help you recognize and heal root causes of burnout specifically. And at the end of this masterclass, I am going to be going into a little bit about what Grounding Source is a little bit more specifically, and maybe how it could potentially work for you or not. But the main purpose of this masterclass is to educate and teach more and more folks about burnout, because the more that I learn about it and the more that I've experienced it and seen it and everybody around me, the more that I know that it just needs to be given more and more light to. So, I get anxious and nervous and so excited about these. I like forget to breathe when I talk sometimes, which is not helpful, but very exciting. But all right, here we go. So why are you guys here and what are we going to go at? We're going to lay this out first. So the three main causes of burnout: the difference between stress and a stressor, human giver syndrome, which I had never heard of until recently when I was doing a bunch of research on burnout, and I'm very excited to share it with you. The idea of your monitor, which you'll learn about, and how to truly complete your stress cycle and what that actually looks like. So let's jump into it. So the top three causes of burnout are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased sense of accomplishment. Emotional exhaustion is in red and number one because it's the biggest and the boldest. And I'm going to go through the other two and define them first before we get into emotional exhaustion. So depersonalization is the feeling of depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion. So it's kind of when like you just stop caring, you don't care what happens anymore, and nothing really feels good. Often I see this being associated with sometimes us thinking that we're protecting ourselves. If I don't care about this, then it won't matter. And all of that is just signs and symptoms of burnout. Decreased sense of accomplishment specifically is the unconquerable sense of futility, feeling as though nothing that you do matters. This is really huge in healthcare workers right now. It's really huge in teachers right now, especially ones who are stuck at home, and really a lot of direct care folks have this come up a lot. And it's one of the main reasons that they get burnt out, because they feel as though nothing that they're doing actually matters, especially right now when we're in a global pandemic and everything is crazy. Like that is just continuing on and on. As a society, we feel this with we're like burnt out on COVID. We're burnt out on social distancing. It doesn't feel like it matters. And that burnout is very true because we're not seeing that. And we have that decreased sense of accomplishment there. And then emotional exhaustion. This is one, I'm going to speak as like men, women often, and know that we are, as a society, really growing and things are changing. And oftentimes, a lot of these factors specifically will hit women harder because of expectations. And we'll go into that a little bit further. But know that, and when I'm speaking of women, I'm speaking of people who identify as a woman and female in general, not just what you're born as. So emotional exhaustion is major. And in order to get into emotional exhaustion, we have to understand emotion. So emotion, think about it as a tunnel. And to get to the light at the other side is getting to the end of the emotion. Emotions typically are pretty quick, and we go through them all the time. Like I would imagine already say you've gone through 20 different emotions at least, and you just got to the end of them and it was fine. Like maybe your dog did something that annoyed you and you were just like, okay, sweet, awesome, like, and you moved on. That emotion was done. Maybe you got frustrated for a minute, you coped with it, you dealt with it, and you moved on. That is getting through that tunnel. Emotional exhaustion happens when you get stuck in that tunnel, when that thing won't go away and you are stuck just going over and over. This happens especially in women, a lot. And it is the fatigue that comes from doing too much for too long. This happens in women a lot because we're praised for doing a lot. We're praised for doing everything, being a badass working mom who is also like making homemade food for their kids and like being the perfect partner and having great sex and looks hot all the time and their body is great. Like all of these things, like we are praised for that. We are praised for doing so much, but doing too much for too long and not and being stuck in emotions, it takes a toll, and that leads women to be burnt out. That's why moms get burnt out and parents get burnt out so much, especially if there's a lot of negative things happening around all of that. Okay. Oh, so emotional exhaustion then, so women were being praised for doing all these things, and the biggest thing is we're supposed to look stable. We're not supposed to look as though there's something difficult going on. So getting stuck in an emotion and that emotional exhaustion also comes up when we're just not able to express it. And this kind of leads into the idea of human giver syndrome, which we're going to go into, which is coined by a philosopher named Kate Main. And she wrote a book in Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny. So human giver syndrome. Human giver syndrome is, hold on, I got to move my screen so I can see it better. Sorry, y'all. So it's the idea that there's two types of humans on the planet. And let's just go with this and like accept it, I think, as opposed to like being like, well, there's all these other things. Like we're going to go with human beings and human givers. That's the philosophy that we're going on. Human beings have a moral obligation to be or express their humanity. So their humanity, their moral obligation, all they're supposed to do that they believe is just be, and that is enough. Human givers have a moral obligation to give their humanity. So we can probably guess which one women typically fall into and why burnout, specifically why I'm talking about women a lot more, is women have been conditioned forever to give our humanity. We are supposed to not just be these strong women, we're supposed to give to others constantly. We're supposed to support others constantly. And that is our moral obligation. That is the idea behind a human giver. And that's what human giver syndrome is. So some things that you might have human giver syndrome, and recognize that having human giver syndrome doesn't mean that you're just like blindly going into all of this. Like, I think something that I noticed for myself is there are pieces of myself that I am like recognizing. I know I'm like aware of the fact that I'm doing something, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to just change it. It means you're constantly coming up against this wall, which is human giver syndrome, of something that you need to work on. So human giver syndrome is believing that you have a moral obligation and owe it to your partner, family, the world, or even yourself to be pretty happy, calm, generous, and attentive, being good at things. Believing that if you fail at this, that you are then a failure as a person. Believing that that failure then means that you deserve punishment. That line right there, believing that you deserve punishment, that is something that is huge in myself, my friends, a lot of people I have talked to. It's that idea of just beating yourself up, just like beating a dead horse, like, oh, I screwed up on that thing, and you just can't get it out of your head. And then the biggest one, the last one, is the idea that believing that these are not symptoms, but normal and true ideas. That is the key here. You can have human giver syndrome. I'm sure a lot of you do. A lot of people I think a lot of men in my life, the men that I have been with or like attracted to and are my friends, are often givers. And it's recognizing that these are symptoms. This is not normal. This is not a true idea. We get to go against this. You don't have to be a human giver, and your worth is not based on you giving. Your moral obligation isn't just to give. Let me see if there was some, yeah. All right, so human giver syndrome gets us stuck in an emotion. It gets us stuck in emotional exhaustion, and it prevents us from finding meaning outside of serving others. And one of the most essential things for our health, right next to like exercise and vegetables, all things that like, these are good for your health, these are things that help you live longer, is having a sense of meaning or a belief in something that is larger. And some people find this in God, some people find this in the outdoors, some people find this in their passion for conducting music, some people find this in their passion with their work and whatever it is, but that is their something, that is their meaning. That is like, some people like to help others find their strength, whatever it is. But it's having that sense of meaning is one of the biggest things that helps you live longer. Human giver syndrome prevents you from finding that easily. Human beings typically have an easier time getting to their sense of meaning and what there's something larger, because they don't get stuck giving to others and giving their humanity and looking good and being pretty and calm and neat. Let me see what else is here. Yeah, I think that's good on that subject. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody, you guys got thumbs up, thumbs medium? Is this like resonating? Cool. Very exciting. So now we're getting into stress and stressors. Human giver syndrome and emotional exhaustion, the causes of burnout, all of that is important. And baseline, burnout and stress are hand in hand, and there is a difference. So burnout happens when we are chronically not dealing with our stress and stressors. The difference between a stress and a stressor is stress is the physiological and neurological process that is happening in your body. The stressor is the trigger that creates that stress response. So stress happens regardless. Like, you could be doing anything and your body is going to feel it. Your body is going to have this happen. It doesn't matter if you're like running away from a lion or if you're finishing your taxes. If you're working on something stressful, your body is going into a physiological and neurological process. So what that process looks like the physical things that are happening in your body, this could be like some jerk at the office is really annoying you and he does it all the time and it makes you feel stressed out. That feeling of stressed out, things that are happening, is epinephrine is getting pushed into your body to move blood to your muscles faster. There's other chemicals that are like shooting off that are saying, keep going, you got this. There's endorphins that are making you ignore any discomfort. Your heart is working extra hard to push more and more blood through, and you are more attentive to things, like you are more on edge almost. Those are the physical things that happen. If you're running away from a lion, very helpful, very essential. If you are finishing your taxes, not very helpful, not exactly what you need. And this is why so many things, like we have physical things that happen when people are chronically stressed over long periods of time, heart disease, weight gain. And this is also because when we are stressed, all of those crazy things to help you run faster and harder and longer are happening. Other parts of your body are being deprioritized. Your other organs just like literally slow down because your body doesn't need them. Your body's like, oh, we're stressed. We don't need our digestion to work very well. We don't need our immune function to work very well. We don't need our growth and tissue repair or our reproductive organs. All of that is being deprioritized. So this is why completing your stress cycle is so essential. It is physically, literally saving your life to complete your stress cycle, which we're going to get into next. Because it's why people have a hard time conceiving children, because they're stressed out. It's why people get heart disease. It's why we gain weight. Simple things that we do to complete our stress cycle and cue to your body. All you have to do is tell your body like, hey, I'm done being stressed. Can we be done being stressed? And you have to physically do something to it. You can't just tell it. It's like not really that connected because we're just not as evolved as our technology is the simple truth. So we've already talked about a lot, and we're going to talk about a few more things. And this is something I want us to like stick on, and I want to resonate with you guys to take away from this. is to process your stress and not your stressor. Start here. Start with processing your stress, because then you get a chance to notice how much effort you are putting into managing others and your own emotions or whatever else is going on. If you start with processing that stress, you're not worrying specifically about managing all these different boundaries or like conversations or anything like that. If we start with just completing your stress cycle, that is going to make a world of a difference. And that is physically going to help yourself. One thing to note is some of us have not been completing our stress cycle. We go through large portions of time where we aren't completing our stress cycle, which means that like it's going to take more than just like one time to complete it, which I'll go into kind of more of that. But the key is that with each time that you're speaking your body's language and you are telling it, that you will incrementally feel better. So speaking your body's language, how do we actually complete the stress cycle? Why does it matter? We know why it matters. Like all of this craziness is happening in your body. Even if your brain is done and like turned in your taxes, your body doesn't actually know that you turned in your taxes. It's still freaking out. It hasn't been cued unless you do one of these things. And these things are so important. The most effective and quickest way to complete your stress cycle is to move your body for 20 to 30 minutes, 20 to 60 minutes, however long that feels good, but at least 20 minutes. And this could be walking, dancing, running, swimming, whatever turns you on, man. I don't care. But something like that is so big and it cues to your body. This is why people go for runs and people go for walks at the end of their day. You're just completing your stress cycle. And if it feels difficult to do exercise, it feels difficult to go on a walk, it's cold, there are other ways, which they're right there, they're less effective, but still effective. But first I want to get into how nature and getting outside is super important as well to have included with completing your stress cycle. So in 2021, oftentimes things that are stressing us out in our stressors are related to our technology, our work, our families, and a lot of screens, a lot of attention being drawn from a lot of different places. I think about a parent who just got back from work who had a ton of things going on at work, or they were working from home or whatever, and you have something happening over here, like a kid is yelling at you over here, your husband's yelling at you over here, or whatever is happening. All of those things are moving your attention. So we have something called directed attention. And directed attention is something that we all start out most days, as long as you get a decent night's sleep, with like a fair amount of directed attention. You have like a full cup of water. And throughout the day, your directed attention gets depleted. Directed attention is what our brains use to switch from one thing to another. So you wake up, your phone pings, you check your email, you check your Instagram, you check your Facebook, you check your TikTok, I don't know, whatever. You check thing on your phone, and then you go to the bathroom, you get ready, and then you're making your smoothie, and then your partner's asking you something. You got to answer that question really quick. And then maybe you have to go, maybe you're going on a walk. That's part of your morning routine or something. And there's cars honking over here, and there's billboards. This is why cities can be really intense for brains, and they deplete your energy quicker. It's because your body is physically having to keep you alive so many different ways. So throughout the day, you have to use a lot of attention to write emails, a lot of attention to make sure that it sounds good, or you're working on a presentation. So your directed attention is going down. This is why at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, probably around now, it gets harder to pay attention to things. And that's because your directed attention is going down. You just have less of it. And there are ways to help it get better and help it just get replenished, which is getting in nature. Getting in nature is one of the most effective ways to heal that directed attention and replenish it. And that is because nature takes your attention modestly. It's not being aggressive with it. And I want to note that it's really important that when you are being in nature in this regard, that it's like a it's mostly not stressful. Like it shouldn't be like at night in a park that you don't know. Like that'd be scary. You don't want to add stress to the situation. The idea is to decrease the stress, obviously. So when you're outside, the nature just, it takes your attention very modestly. It's less aggressive in doing it. So completing your stress cycle by moving or walking and doing that outside is extremely effective in ways to complete your stress cycle, which is what we were talking about before. The less effective, but still quite effective ways of completing your stress cycle is breathing. Doing a few deep breaths is a great way to help yourself, especially if you don't have time to go for a run. Positive social interaction. These are all scientifically proven, just so you know, like this is all science stuff from a few different sources. I know it sounds very technical in the moment, but positive social interaction. And this positive social interaction doesn't have to be like something big, like a big party or something. That might not even be positive for you. That might just be stressful for you. But it could be saying something nice to the person in the checkout line. To complete your stress cycle. Affection. This is one that gets talked about a lot, and like, ooh, my internet connection is unstable. Whatever, keep going. Sweet. So affection can look like a hug. And this hug, there are some like little things that are important about it. It's like hugging somebody for like 20 to 30 seconds. And the idea is that it's long enough that you're actually participating in the hug and like letting go. And it's also important that you are both holding your own body weight. So you're both standing and hugging each other as opposed to like fully leaning in on somebody. I'll send you guys a few of like the sources in the follow-up email just so that you guys can like see this stuff as well if you're curious about it. But, and another one is a 6-second kiss, which I kind of like this one. I think it's funny and also it works. The idea is that affection does complete your stress cycle, and a 6-second kiss is longer than a normal kiss. It's not habitual, and it's too long to kiss somebody that you don't want to be kissing. Like if you're kissing somebody for 6 seconds, you really have to like get comfortable, and like it's a while. Like, I mean, we're not all like teenagers and making out like for hours anymore, you know. It's a lot of pecks of here and there. So get your 6-second kiss in, guys. It will help your stress cycle complete. A big cry is really helpful for completing your stress cycle. And then creative expression, artists. This is a big one, like writing music, creating music, just playing, doing pottery or drawing or whatever it is. Those are great ways to complete your stress cycle. Again, the most effective and quickest way is 20 to 30 minutes of walking, dancing, running, swimming, something physical. All right, so we've talked about stress. Now we're going to talk about stressors. So we all have stressors, and we all have this thing called the monitor, which is coined by Amelia and Emily Nagoski. They wrote a book called Burnout. So the monitor is the discrepancy reducing and increasing feedback loop. Doesn't really make sense. But basically what the monitor does is it's this ongoing tally in your brain. It knows what your goal is. It knows how much effort you're investing into that goal and how much progress you're making. It's basically making a running tally of effort to progress. So like, how hard is this? How hard do I have to work? How much progress am I making? And so on and so forth. We often push ourselves too far and keep going more than we need to try and regain control. This happens with women and men and everybody, especially with women. Women will keep going and pressing and trying to regain control while trying to still be poised for a very long time. Like if we have an idea that getting to the mall is supposed to take 15 minutes and it ends up taking a half an hour or 45 minutes because of traffic or something like that, all of a sudden we're having these things triggered in our brains of like, wait, this is taking too long. Okay, well, I guess, is this worth it? Is it not worth it? There's this back and forth that we're going through. So ways in which we're pushing ourselves too far and we keep going more, we're trying to regain control. Oftentimes I'll hear people, and these are not effective ways of interacting with our monitor. Our monitor is that idea of like how much effort we're putting in. Is we're saying things like, I stood my ground and I fought, or I really worked at it, something like that, when really standing your ground and fighting isn't always the most effective thing. Sometimes it is significantly more important to ask for help. We are taught to persist, and it is glorified. Remind yourself that that's what's ingrained in us. And there's been huge movements, and it is important that we do that. We do have to persist. However, it's also important to listen to that quiet voice that is telling you that it's time to quit. Or maybe this isn't working. I've been running up against this wall the same way the entire time. I want to look through my notes here really quick, make sure I got everything I wanted to. Awesome. This is a really hard one to come to, I think, like in regards of like, this is like managing our stressors. Some of our stressors are really big ones, like our relationships or our work or our career path or whatever. And it almost can be helpful to create like a pros cons list of like, okay, I keep coming up against this stressor. I'm gonna start with completing my stress cycle. That's what I'm gonna focus on. And I'm gonna maybe make note of all of the stressors that are happening and what I keep coming up to instead. So things that we've gone through: causes of burnout, human giver syndrome, stress versus stressors, completing your stress cycle, and your monitor. The biggest thing that we talked about is completing your stress cycle. That's the most important thing. But then there's this idea that we often give up on our self-care practices. Like, who in here, not all of you guys are videos, but you can, in your head, raise your hand or whatever. Who here has started like a self-care practice, like, ooh, I'm gonna eat green smoothies, or I'm gonna do yoga every day, or I'm gonna do this or that, like some sort of self-care practice. And then you just got tired. Does that like resonate with anybody? Yeah, definitely. So, well, there's a little, yeah. So the thing is, there's this quote, it says, if you paint the dingiest wall in the room, it only makes the rest of the walls look dingier. Dingy walls can be managing other people's emotions. It can be managing your own emotions. It can be shame associated with not having taken care of yourself as well. It could be shame associated with so many different things. So what are your dingy walls? Because the truth is we do get burnt out on self-care practices because all of a sudden we're expecting more and more from ourselves, and we still haven't like truly addressed and gotten down to the root causes of what our burnout is. So write that question down, and I encourage you to look into it. Like, what are your dingy walls? What are the things that, like, when you start to do your self-care practices, it feels like an uphill battle over and over again. So this is kind of where, this is where grounding source comes in. This is the idea, is we focus on healing burnout from the inside and incorporating nature and empowerment practices to help carry them through every aspect of your life. Because one of the biggest reasons that I see that people haven't taken time to go into their burnout is they don't have the time. They literally just don't have time. Like, sure, maybe they can like get like 24 hours like alone, but then you're at your house and you've got your TV there and your phone and somebody's still dinging you, and you're in your house and there's like, oh, well, I mean, I could like reorganize every cabinet, like why not? Who did that at the beginning of quarantine? Like 90% of the people I know. And the truth is that being alone itself, like by itself, is important. Being alone in nature and doing all of that is so important. Movement, they're all essential to healing burnout. Alone time allows you to truly set and figure out what boundaries are going to be important to you to help you manage those stressors. Because a lot of us, our burnout is at the point where there's just like, we're bleeding everywhere. Like there's like, you got into like a big trauma, you like kind of stopped the bleeding for a minute, but you didn't actually figure out why you started bleeding. And that feels really stressful. And then you just like keep putting a Band-Aid on, keep stopping the bleeding, but it keeps happening. And it keeps happening because that root cause is super important to focus on. So in Grounding Source, we have two different ways and two main things that we do. We have the Wilderness Solo and the Root Cause Burnout course. The Root Cause Burnout course is a 6-week do-at-home online course. And I'm currently revamping it. It's almost ready, and I'm super excited about it. However, I'm going to focus here on sharing about the solo and how it can be really powerful. So in general, Grounding Source, like my main focus and what I love so much, it's the idea of focus on diving into where you're at right now and healing the burnout at the core. So the solo is a 3-day immersive experience where we focus attention to create intention. Not my quote, the quote from my wedding that somebody put, but it's beautiful and essential. The solo immersion experience allows you to have time to focus on yourself with 0 distractions. And I think that is the biggest part, is 0 distractions. Getting that full digital detox, which is difficult to do when we're at home. It's difficult to do even on just a short camping trip with your friends. Getting that full digital detox is really important. And during the solo experience, we promote vulnerability and we dive deep into core parts of where your burnout is coming from. I honestly just think the solo is magic. It is so good at doing what it does. Every time a client comes out from it, they have a literal glow. Maybe not literally. I think it's a literal glow. I see them like glowing and feeling light and just so much better from this experience. So here's a couple of testimonials from folks that I think kind of share the main pieces of the solo and why it can be so essential to helping that burnout. So the solo is full of unexpected experiences, primarily that much time away from being in immediate contact with anyone. I was surprised to find that I loved it. Also, I went into the solo with a topic that I knew I wanted to focus on. And while I did direct much of my energy and intention into that topic, it was unexpected that another topic pushed its way to the front of my focus, and I was prepared to confront it. And what I like about that is that she was prepared to confront it. Something else came up for her, and it was totally fine, and it accelerated her process. Like afterwards, we talked about it quite a bit, and she was like, yeah, I wasn't thinking I was going to work on that for a couple of years, but here we are, worked on it, and I feel good. And that's the magic of spending time alone in the wilderness, spending intention and time like really getting into your cycles of health and wellness and stress and how your burnout is manifesting in all these different ways. Because your burnout isn't just coming from your job, and you likely don't even need to quit your job to heal your burnout. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I'll quit my job and everything's gonna be great. Like, no, it's not. It's also like your relationship and your relationship with yourself and everything else coming around. This other one is, I'm pretty sure I got more out of 30 hours alone in the wilderness with intention and some new tools for dealing with trauma and emotions that Marissa and Charlie taught me than in the last 4 years of therapy. And there's one other guy who I don't have his on here. He was like, this trip was more powerful than 2.5 years in therapy, which really just warms my soul. But I give a lot of that credit to the wilderness. I give a lot of that credit to them, each person putting intention and time into healing those parts of their burnout, those things that are actually bugging them. That goes into every other portion of their life. But burnout's the loud, crazy thing that is in your face. So I'm committed to serving folks who need to heal their burnout, who want to work on their stress, and they want to regain control over their stress. So each of y'all on the call, and if you're getting the replay, you get this as well. But I'll have a special offer on the solo for everybody who schedules their call in the next 24 hours. That doesn't mean you have to actually have your call in the next 24 hours. You have to have your call in like the next 2 weeks. But if you schedule it in the next 24 hours, then you'll get special offer on the solo. And we can talk more about your specific burnout and ways in which you can like tactically work through your stress or stressors right now. So that grounding call they're always free. You can schedule it going to groundingsource.com, and there's like a little thing at the top corner that says book your call now. Or I'll also be sending everything in the follow-up email. And it's just I love being able to chat with each and every one of you. And I love being able to help everybody individually. So I would love to. And the last thing is, if you don't already follow us on all the things, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and any follow-up questions. So right now, it's not like a great timing to get into like a lot of questions back and forth. But any questions that you wrote down, that you think of, that you thought of, send them to me either in a DM on Instagram or just like reply to an email, something like that. But let me answer anything and everything. I would love to. I am obsessed with burnout and stress. I feel it myself. I get myself in these cycles of not wanting to complete my stress cycle and then being even more stressed out and more burnt out. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like. So I'd love to have a call with each and every one of you and talk more about it. If you loved this, if you thought it was great, share more about Grounding Source on your social media. The most powerful thing is word of mouth and us getting more and more of our word out there to more people. So I'd love to connect with all of you. And that's all I have for the Burnout Master Course. It went down, and I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see each of you a little bit better. Awesome. Fun. I wonder how I can get into their view. There we go. Well, thank you everybody for showing up. Now I can actually see all your faces. And like when I was doing my presentation, I could only see a couple of your faces on the side. But I'm stoked that you guys are all here. Thanks for showing up. And thanks for showing your faces, those of you who did. Powerful. Have a great rest of your day. Send me questions on Instagram.